We're going to pick back up our conversation with Steve Forbes. Steve, the author of a new book with a succinct title, Money. Now, he's got a little more to it, a subtitle dealing with our currency and what is transpiring. Steve Forbes standing by patiently at Newsmax, New York. And here's the full title: How the Destruction of the Dollar Threatens the Global Economy and What We Can Do About It. And now from Newsmax, New York, the aforementioned Steve Forbes back to talk about the economic situation, and we'll move from the dismal science into political science, which may be the ultimate oxymoron. But Steve, the title of the book tells us that the United States, in your opinion, is not handling its currency well. Okay, let's take a look at the scene monetarily, internationally. Are you seeing anything that approaches monetary sanity in Europe or in Asia, specifically in a nation like China?
Certainly not in Europe. The euro is a little better than the dollar, but that's all relative. The euro is weak, the dollar is weak. The Chinese yuan has exhibited some weakness because the Chinese people, if they have a chance, want to diversify their assets around the world. They know they have an economy that, for all its ups and downs, is growing upward, but they don't trust the government entirely, so they want to hedge their bets. The Japanese yen has been a little bit weak. They're trying to practice quantitative easing. Why they want to imitate what we're doing, I don't know. It's one reason why Japan's been in a rut for the last 20 years. So the sad thing is, none of the world gets it on money, really, which is one reason why we wrote this book, to start educating people. Money is very, very simple, JD. Money simply makes it easier to do transactions with each other. It is a measure of value, like we said earlier, like scales are a measure of weight or clocks measure time. And if economists understood that, they wouldn't be manipulating it any more than we should be manipulating the number of minutes in an hour.
Well, we know, Steve, that China's had their currency artificially low to benefit them in trade here. But I want to move on to another topic, and that's President Obama. He doesn't have too many strong allies these days, but he seems to have one in Pope Francis. The new Pope frequently talks about the need for what he calls income redistribution, and his critics are saying that Pope Francis is a socialist. Are you concerned by the Pope's message in today's economic environment? Some polls are suggesting that might be a politically beneficial thing, at least on the global stage.
Well, I think his two predecessors understood that a true capitalism, true free markets, enables people to move up, as Lincoln put it, improve their lot in life. And one of the things I think the current Pope is overcoming is his background in Argentina, where you didn't have free markets. You had state capitalism, what we call crony capitalism. So I think a number of theologians are going to be working with the Pope to give him a broader view of what true free markets are. But again, the best way to fight poverty in the world is prosperity. And the best way you get prosperity, one of the key ways, is to have a sound currency, low taxes, and then, by golly, people have a chance to move up in the world and create higher incomes for all.
Steve, it may not be Pope Francis and his background in Argentina exclusively. I mean, we're seeing articles. Today, for example, the Wall Street Journal in its blog, Wall Street worries about the common man, the suggestion that wages are too low and something must be done. You are seeing other books, in stark contrast to your own, talking about responsibility to the middle class and how to shore up wages. And of course, we just saw in Seattle that mandate from the city council to raise minimum wage to $15 an hour. Now, against all that, how do we really return to the principles of a free market economy?
Well, one of the things we point out in the book in a chapter talks about the erosion of social trust when you have unsound money. John Maynard Keynes got that right nearly a century ago, and I did a blog on the Seattle situation, and what that is a manifestation of is what happens when social trust is undermined, when people don't have faith in the future. They turn to expedients like mandating higher wages, which won't work in the real world. Prosperity will. And the key, again, to prosperity is what we did for 180 years in this country's existence, having a sound dollar, sensible taxation, and then this economy will once again lead the world and people's wages will rise again. But when you have funny money, unsound money instead of good money, then you do have median income stagnating in this country, which we've seen in the last 10 years. People don't feel they have a chance to get ahead, and therefore you get eruptions like what you see in Seattle, even though all the evidence points out that's going to end up costing jobs, especially among young people.
Steve, let's turn now from the dismal science to the ultimate oxymoron of political science. I can recall back during my days in Congress, you graciously showed up on my behalf before a couple of midterm elections. And now that we're heading toward the midterms, all the polls seem to suggest a strong year for the GOP, specifically a Senate takeover. As you gaze into your crystal ball, what seats do you think are ripe for switching to the GOP? And do you expect to see a Republican majority in the U.S. Senate following the midterm elections?
I think we will see a majority in the Senate. There are 13 states where the GOP has a chance to do it. Everywhere from New Hampshire, West Virginia, we've got an excellent chance. North Carolina, Arkansas, Louisiana, Iowa, we've got a strong candidate there. I think we have a chance in Michigan, Minnesota, certainly South Dakota, Montana. Colorado's competitive, and amazingly, Oregon is competitive. And I think we've got a good chance of winning Alaska. So this should be a good year for the GOP. We can't count on it yet because in the last election cycle, 2012, when there are 23 Democrat seats coming up and only 10 Republican seats, the Republicans still managed to lose 2 seats. So there's a reason why they call the Democrats the evil party and the Republicans the stupid party. We sometimes, we Republicans, take defeat out of the jaws of victory. But I think this cycle, things are going our way. We've got some good candidates out there, and I think we will take that majority.
There does seem to be some optimism, Steve, based on the depth on the bench. Let's talk about 2016 because that will be here before we know it as well. Maybe it's already here in many ways. Hillary Clinton starting her book tour this week. It looks like she's going to be the clear frontrunner in the Democratic Party. Do you think the GOP can beat her?
Oh, yes. If we have a good Reagan-esque optimistic message, I think we will win it. And we've got a good bench, as you mentioned, and governors who've done real things, dealt with real crises like Scott Walker in Wisconsin. We've got strong senators. Rand Paul certainly is going to be out there. You mentioned the junior senator earlier from Texas, Ted Cruz. I don't know whether he'll run, but he's certainly looking at the thing. So there's going to be a strong array of candidates looking at the presidency, and I think several of them will run, and I think we've got a good chance to take it. And remember, nobody took Ronald Reagan very seriously when he ran for a third time back in 1979. They said, oh, he's too old, washed up. And he won in a landslide and was one of our greatest presidents. So I'm optimistic we can win in 2016.
Now, there's one name missing from that group, and I'm surprised it's missing. That's the name of Steve Forbes. You've run twice. Oh. You've taken a look at it. Now,
I have, and
well, I'm just wondering.
But I'm an agitator now.
So you've really decided.
Trying to educate.
We just really want to get this down once. No recurrence of presidential fever. You are happy to, as you say, be an agitator and an idea guy. You're not going to run again for political office?
No, that's one fever that broke several years ago, and no, I have no. I'll let the others do the exercising of running. I'll stick to a treadmill.
Well, with that in mind, Steve, some of those prospective candidates might be looking in today on Newsmax TV. Give us the Steve Forbes rules for running for president. What did you learn that you're happy to impart for would-be candidates in terms of the pace, the scrutiny, and some things that might not initially occur to those presidential aspirants? Take us through that. We got about 2.5 minutes remaining. We'd love to get your insights on that.
Well, aside from the fact that it's more fun to win than to lose, which means get more votes than your opponent, the key thing is going out with a positive agenda. We can criticize this administration. It's the most lawless administration certainly in memory, and their trampling of the Constitution. All those are very legitimate issues, but then we have to show the country how we can do better. That means radical simplification of the tax code, like a flat tax. That means a health care system where the patient is first. That means a dollar that is good as gold. And positive things like that, I think, will win the day. And one of the key things when you get on the campaign trail is recognize that at the beginning, audiences are going to be skeptical. They do have the Missouri attitude, show me, especially in Iowa and New Hampshire. They've seen it all before, but you just have to do it step by step by step. And then if you start to get traction, you are going to get criticism. And how you handle that criticism is going to enable people to size up whether you can handle the pressures of office. And don't let the criticism grind you down. Stick to your agenda, stick to what you're running for. Give people a sense that you have a real purpose in running, and you'll see the thing through. Don't let the media define your agenda. You define your own agenda the way Reagan did. Don't let them throw you off your game.
Well, Steve, someone who's tried to do that, I guess you could say, is Jeb Bush, getting out in front on the immigration issue, calling it an act of love. Maybe you could make an argument he's the one presenting the most optimistic view of America in the future. You could make that argument maybe. Give us your take real quickly on Jeb Bush, and what do you think about his stance and the way he's flirting with the idea maybe of running for president?
Well, he had a very good record as governor of Florida, particularly in the issues like education and reform of Medicaid. So he's got the credentials to do it. But again, you've got to come out with a whole platform, not just a particular issue on a particular day. And so good, he's testing the waters, as I think Scott Walker will when he wins re-election, which I think he will. It's going to be very nasty and tough in Wisconsin this November, but I think he'll triumph. Kasich of Ohio is going to be looking at things, Bobby Jindal and others, Mike Pence. So there's a strong bench out there, and if the more governors we get running, the more candidates we get looking at the thing, I think it's better. Let the voters have some real choice out there. And one of the things that you learn on the campaign trail, it's not just one way. You learn from the voters. You learn from the feedback.
And we've learned a lot from
about
you
our
in this
country
time.
when you do.
Steve Forbes, we thank you for your time. We look forward to reading your new book.
Thank you, JD.
There's more to come.